Pattaya City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
If you live by yourself, really at any age, have a daily check-in thing with somebody else who has or two other people that have keys to your room that you trust, okay? Literally, I saved a woman's life because we started up a check-in group. And also, you don't want to know all the stories yet, I'll tell you sometime. But who remembers Philip? Philip, the tall, thin guy, walked with a frame or a cane? Philip Wall Morris, really nice, super nice guy. Anyway, I'll tell you the story maybe later. Basically, he's in hospital and he wants to die anyway. And that issue of wanting to die actually comes up in this amazing book, The Gamekeeper, by David Collier, who's the founder of Canterbury Tales. Really, you really want to read this book. And we've got copies here for only 300 baht. It's unbelievable. Huge value, right? What's it cost for a film now, George? Yeah. You snuck in because you're so small, I know. Somebody's glasses are left out. Yeah, if they're my prescription, I'll keep them. Check if you've got your glasses, okay? Somebody left them at the front table, I don't know. Nobody else is saying anything, so. Can you see them? Okay, cool. There you go. So anyway, among other things, he's going to be talking about this. He's given a talk at the club before. He's the founder of Canterbury Tales Bookshop, a really amazing thing. They moved to a new venue away from Soy Pothole. He's going to tell you the story of that. And we're going to call for all the strong people to come up and look if we can get him on stage. Welcome to one of the shining lights of Pattaya. Who would have thought that there was actually a market in this, in all these bars and stuff for a bookshop? And yet this guy's been running one for decades and doing a really cool job. So we're going to welcome him on stage, we hope, get him on stage. By the way, we've been starting to pester the management here to get ramps for people, especially after we had the disabled ladies here, etc. All right, let's bring you on stage. We've done it before.
How are you doing? Yeah, because I can't hold that, unfortunately. but that's all right. Hello.
Yep.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
And that's what the screen is.
Okay. Is that picture up on there, is it?
Yes, what's up there will be...
That's actually a picture of the book of 20 years of Canterbury Tales, Bill. And so that was the way we went forward with the bookshop. We did a lot of food at the time and so on. And the first year I had a bar, but realised that wasn't for me. So we ended up with about 30 rooms in Soy Pothole in 3 different buildings. And the photo on the right is the guy sitting naked outside the bookshop. The guy who had a bit of a protest about being asked to leave one of the rooms because he insulted my wife. And his protest was to come back and take all his clothes off and sit outside naked. God knows what sort of protest that was, but he got arrested and blamed me for phoning the police, which I didn't do. Anyway, that's a front cover of the 20 years of Canterbury Tales. Anyway, we got where after the pandemic, it got so busy in Soy Chayapoon, all bars and dusty, and it had always been dusty actually. It was time to move, so we moved up to Soy Bongkot. And initially one of the problems with that was people couldn't find it. They'd never been up that way. And I had a hell of a job to change Google Maps because everybody put in Canterbury Tales and automatically came up as Cafe, which the old place was. So now you have to put in Canterbury Tales Bookshop on Google Maps to find it accurately. But most people by now know where we are. And it's still relatively busy. It's a lot more lady friendly than Soy Pothole. We get a lot more ladies up there and kids as well. And it's pretty much the only bookshop in Pattaya now. So it keeps us out of mischief, you know. We have a lot of banter with the regulars, and some of you relate to that. But no, it's good, and it was going great until around 2013 when I got diagnosed with a muscle wasting illness called myositis, and I doubt if anybody's ever heard of that in here. It's quite a rare thing in Asia. And subsequently I've ended up in a wheelchair. Now I can't even feed myself, and of course you've got a bookshop, you might as well write a book, so that was the obvious thing to do. And I always wanted to get the story out, and the Gamekeeper came from there. I was a gamekeeper from a child, really, right up until in my 30s, nearly 40s. Then I had problems with marriage and everything else, and certain things, and I needed a change of scenery. And then, of course, what do you do after being a gamekeeper for all them years? And I started doing some voluntary work with the Samaritans. Not really a natural progression from a gamekeeper, but something I wanted to try my hand at. And then I got involved with the prisons, and which was quite interesting. We ran a listener scheme in the prisons on the Isle of Sheppey and Canterbury, and that got very, very interesting. And then I met a couple of guys who I was doing some driving, and that got very interesting as well, and was involved in Elmley prisons and on the Isle of Sheppey mostly. And yeah, it got a little bit tricky, and then 2003 I came to Thailand, and it's all gone from there really. And I always judge people in Pattaya, or particularly on either a relationship or business, is how long have you been involved in it, because there's many guys, one of the famous sayings is, I used to have a bar, and even right up until very recently, a guy was going to rent one of our condos, and he liked it, but his girlfriend didn't. And I said, remember the golden rule: those who hold the gold make the rules, and so on. So there's still plenty of gullible, looking for love. I'm not looking at you, Pete, honest. And so yeah, and of course a lot of people don't tend to take advice because they're a bit besotted sometimes, and sometimes you catch them in time. Sorry, I'm looking at you again, Pete. No, anyway, so it's been a hell of a journey, and even though I'm very dependent now on my wife, and I've been with her 20 years nearly as well, and she have to suffer me on a daily basis, and getting in and out of bed and just those things that you all take for granted. You miss just being able to just jump up and get on the bed and have a lie down. I have to have a patient hoist and all sorts of bloody stuff, and I have an oxygen machine because my lungs are knackered, and a nebulizer and all that. So it's very, very frustrating. And writing the book took my mind off a lot of it. It took me about 5 years, and it's been quite well received. And although on Amazon I've only had, I think, 14 reviews, so not a great, but quite a lot of people have enjoyed it. So that's what it's all about. And it's very much a different life, as you can see in that picture there. The way of life for a gamekeeper is, God, I wonder how the hell I ended up in Pattaya, But here I am, and 20 years later I'm still here. And I'm on a pension now, so 67 years old now, so I get free money from England as well, so that's a pleasure. And here we are. So then I started writing a book after this one, of course, 20 years of Canterbury Tales, all the funny stories, and there really are some funny stories. Sorry, Pete, I'm looking at you, I don't know why. But anyway, yeah, some of the characters who have been in and out of Pattaya, quite a few are dead now, and so on. I'm just looking at some of the pictures of when I was a gamekeeper. God, where the fuck did all that go? The bottom left there, I was about sort of 18, I think. My first shooting suit that was supplied by the estate, and that was Eastwell Park in Ashford in Kent. The guy on the right, the old fellow, he taught me all I knew. He was the old gamekeeper. He used to catch us as kids when we went birds egging and stuff when we were young. And on the right there is when I used to smoke cigars and God knows what on a shoot day, and so on. And yeah, the old 410 shotgun was the first shotgun I ever used, so on. Next one. Ah, yes, right. Well, that picture there is during the book. This guy, I used to visit him in prison. I knew him as a teenager when we were in Canterbury, and he was in prison, and I went to see him, and I started seeing him regularly. And then he had a taxi firm in Canterbury called Lynx Taxis, and in fact you can still Google Lynx Taxis Mickey Smith, because it's a cold case murder. He's never been solved, but he was still dealing in drugs, and the guys who shot him were from the north of England and over a drug debt. So, but anyway, that was an interesting part of the book, and I've had a few comments on that because of the fact it's still a cold case murder. And that's Stanford Hill, which is an open prison on the Isle of Sheppey. In fact, that's where Mickey Smith was when I met him. He had the last 6 months of his sentence, and I looked after him a bit when he got out of prison, but that didn't work out too well for him. The DNA, that was very, very new when I was doing the prison thing, and we used to discuss it with the inmates and stuff, and some of the listeners, and a lot of them were crapping themselves because of DNA, and they didn't understand it. And you know, we would discuss, you only need to leave a little bit of blood or something somewhere, and they could have it 20 years later, and they're still catching up with cold cases, and a lot of the guys in prison was panicking over that sort of thing. But here we are. That's some of the homemade weapons that they used to make in prison, and it's in reception. It was one of the very few things I could take photos of, although that's not one of them, but they was very, very similar, of all the shanks as they called them. And of course these are just random photos really, because I couldn't exactly walk around the prison with a camera, so these are just sort of random photos. And then I came to Thailand in 2003 to get away from there really, just to have a break, and I moved to Bangkok and done a bit of teaching, where I met my wife, who I'm still with now. She was a teacher. That guy there, actually, Merrick Rogers, he done 15 years. He was also a cab driver on the same company. And around the same time, just before Smithy got shot, he strangled his girlfriend. And he'd done 15 years. I sort of followed it, the case as such. But as you can see, he doesn't look the sort of type of guy that is capable of murdering. But he walked his girlfriend home one evening, his ex-girlfriend, and something happened and he strangled her, and they found her the next day. And he actually confessed, before they got him on the DNA and everything else, he actually confessed to the murder to Smithy, and the police then arrested him and so on. Again, just a random photo. Move on to the next one, John, and I can... Not much to say about that. That is actually the rearing field where we used to rear the pheasants and partridges. That one again is at Eastwell Park, and you'll see the big runs where we would let them out after a couple of weeks and so on, but that was where we reared all the pheasants, and we were rearing 35 or so thousand pheasants there, and about 8,000 or 9,000 partridges, all for shooting of course. And it's something I'd always wanted to do from a child. That was the first big estate I went on to, Eastwell Park, and they'd shoot sort of 1,000 pheasants a day and 200 or 300 partridges, and we had ducks there and all that. There I am with a moustache and a cigar, and talking to one of the guns, as they called them, shooting, and one of my spaniels behind me there. So that was in Wiltshire. When I moved from Eastwell Park. Eventually I went to Wiltshire, Spy Park, and that's my uncle on my left, my nan on my right, and my mum, and then my auntie. They came up to visit me and so on. I look like bloody Indiana Jones there, don't I? And I look at these old photos and I think, God, how have I ended up in Pattaya in a wheelchair? Amazing how life can change. But anyway, that was really interesting. No, that's just part of my new book, The Gamekeeper, just to put it onto a background of Pattaya. Another little advert I did. But yeah, the book has been well received. Quite a lot of people have enjoyed it. I had one bad review on Amazon, just 1 star, and the comment was rubbish. But that was from a lady, and really it's not, as most of you might agree, it's not really lady female reading. It's a bit harsh, dealing with prisoners and paedophiles and murderers and stuff, and shooting things, pheasants and what have you. There I am, young man, God almighty. Yeah, I think I was about 17, 18 there. Something like that. Memories, eh? But there we are. Any questions on the book? Anybody? That's Eastwell Park there, that picture. Yeah, it predominantly covers a bit about my childhood and how I wanted to become a gamekeeper after being a bird's egg collector. And the old gamekeeper used to catch us and, clip us around the ear and so on. And then I decided I wanted to be a gamekeeper when I left school. And I wondered why I was bothering with school, because I knew what I was going to do. And I learnt all the tricks of the trade with poaching or vehicles parked and stuff like that. Very much different than today. If we saw a dog running around off the lead there where it shouldn't be, we would catch the bloody dog and take it back to the vehicle and tie it up. Not nothing too severe, but it was a good deterrent to stop people coming back. And we had a problem with cats for some time. The local estate where people had cats, they'd come hunting the pheasants and partridges. And again, it was the methods of dealing with the cats. I used to sneak around the estate with a hessian sack and half a tin of cat food and lure the cat into the sack and take it away, and that would get rid of the cats. And suddenly people around the estate was wondering where all their cats were going, so I had to be a bit more discreet with it. But that was when I was literally 10, 11, 12 years old and that sort of thing. And then I had a situation, years went by, I worked on different estates, and then I had a problem with my neighbour shooting my pheasants and so on, and I'd lost a lot of heart in the job and needed a break from it. So I got another job and I still couldn't put my heart to it, so I then packed it in. And I'd been through a relationship, had a young daughter, and thought, now what do I do now? So I started doing voluntary work at a deaf and disabled centre, learnt sign language and all that, and then met the Samaritan director, and I'd found a few dead bodies during my gamekeeping days, in the cars and stuff, suicides. So it seemed sort of almost a natural progression. So I joined the Samaritans, done the training, and done quite a time in the centre in Canterbury, and met the old guy Tom, who was doing the prisons, and he was looking for someone to help him and take it over when he retired. And it just seemed to be at the right place at the right time, and I thought, that's going to be pretty fascinating, and it was. But I got, like I tended to do with the game, I got too involved, really, and it got a little bit silly. And in the end, that's one of the reasons I came to Thailand, to get away from it all. Because after the prisons, I started doing a bit of driving because I needed to earn some money. And then I was driving a couple of guys around different times who were debt collectors, and quite an adventure, to be honest. And a lot of it, as you'll see in the book, is of course the book will be in fiction, you understand. I used to do a bit of art, but anyway, I got involved with these guys, and Harry the Turk, he first brought me to Thailand in the millennium year 2000, and it was always going to be a place really that that I was going to get away to or retire to or whatever. And in 2003, as I say, I came for a year, just to get out. And I never went back. I've only been back once in 20 years, or 21 years. And that was when my father passed away, so... And of course I'm not going again now, not in my condition, so... and so that's really, the Gamekeeper book goes up to pretty much when I left England. There's very little about Thailand, apart from a couple of times things that happened when we came here before on holiday. But then I've gone on to the new book, which is short stories of some of the characters. And one of the classics was a guy called Clive. He was an alcoholic, and he was just a funny guy. He was always losing money, and he would take people back to his room and wake up with a sore bottom and no money, sort of thing. I won't elaborate any more on that, but anyway, one of his famous ones, he was in the bookshop one day and he went to pay his bill in the bookshop, and he had this bloody great wad of notes in his pocket, and Clive was terrible with money, and I said to him, because I'd often look after his passport and so on, because he'd always losing it, and anyway I said, why have you got all that money? And he said, well, it's my money, it's up to me to do what so I knew it was a guilt thing. And he'd met this girl in a bar who was different, one of those, and she told him this sob story, and he was going to loan her 50,000 baht, which he had in his pocket, and I saved him from that. But she, apparently the story was that she was at home, because she wasn't a bar girl, she was just down here to see her sister, and and the father got on the motorbike to go and pick the kids up from school, but a tile fell off the roof, hit him on the head. The motorbike went down into the pond, all the ducks flew out and frightened the buffalo, and the buffalo ran down the road and knocked 2 bikes over and dented a car, and so he was paying for the new buffalo, or the new whatever, and all this business, and it was going to be 50,000 baht, and I just said, no way, you're not going back to that bar, because the actual worst, I shouldn't really share this with ladies in the audience, but anyway, there was another part of that story which was only Clive. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I won't share it, not in front of ladies, but put your fingers in your... Well, what it was, he, as he got his money out, do forgive me for sharing this, won't you, love? As he got his money out, he had a handkerchief, and it stunk of vomit. And I said, what the hell was that about, Clive? And he said the lady was trying to give him favours, sexual favours, but she was drunk, and she vomited all over him. And he used his bloody handkerchief to wipe the vomit up, and it was still in his pocket. And I asked him, was it a memento from this relationship, But that was Clive all over. He was an absolute nightmare, and but great fun. And he's not with us anymore. He went back to Canterbury and passed away. But yeah, some stories like that, and just numerous. A fellow called Derek, if anybody remembers Derek, he's predominantly part of the book, because he was a bit like Arthur Daly. He didn't do anything legal. It was borderline illegal. He'd beg, borrow and steal anything he could. He turned up. John Collingbourne's not in here, is he? But he turned up at the cafe one day with a set of golf clubs, and he asked me if I could help him sell them. So I said, yeah, what's the story then? And he'd been at John Collingbourne's, came out the back entrance where people used to leave stuff. There was a set of golf clubs there, so he just put them on his shoulder and drove off with them. And then, of course, when he told me that, I said, no way I'm bloody selling them, people will think I'm part of it. And he took them away, but that was Derek. He was just a rogue. But anyway, yeah, so I was going to do a sequel to the book of the Gamekeeper, but I don't know whether I've got the energy because, for example, I can't type now. I can use my mouse on my desk, and I have a keyboard on one of my screens, so that's how I type. And I used to use Dragon software for talk and text, which was quite good, but I'd be talking and you'd have to be quite clear. And of course always my wife is wandering around behind me, and one day she asked me why I'd killed a policeman, and I, bemused as I was, I said, I haven't killed a policeman. She said, I heard you say you kill policemen. Now I said I kicked a policeman, and that was actually a true story, but it was she thought I'd killed a policeman, so she was a bit worried, you know. But it was all during this gamekeeping period where I was having problems, and the police came out and so on. And anyway, but there we are. Anybody else? No, I'm fine, Brian. Thank you. Yeah.
I had another question for American. I'm not exactly sure what a gamekeeper does.
Don't worry about that. I'm non-judgmental.
Okay. No, we need it for the video.
Aren't I, Pete?
As an American, I'm not exactly sure what a gamekeeper does. So if you could explain that role, I get a little bit of it from what you're saying. But
yeah, I mean, basically, we rear, put pheasants' eggs in an incubator, have a pen that catch all the hens up from the year before, collect the eggs, rear the pheasants. That photo earlier on was the rearing field, where they go from when they hatch to day olds. And of course you would, in between that, you're out clearing up vermin, crows, magpies, foxes, cats and all that stuff. And you would organise shoot days where you may have 8 or 10 guns come, sometimes double guns where when they're shooting, say, 1,000 birds a day. And it was quite an expensive thing. But we would organise the day, and you'd have beaters and drive the birds over the guns, and they'd shoot them basically, and be partridges, ducks and pheasants down south and so on.
But also a big part of it was keeping the poachers at bay, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned
that
I think
was the best
gypsies
part
quite a bit.
That was the fun part of the job. Yeah, I mean we suffered a few poachers over the years, and I'm going back a long time, and the police weren't interested. They were more scared of getting their boots dirty. So if we found, we would drive around with their lights out at night. If we found them lamping, we'd find their vehicle, because often it was so isolated they would have to drive there, and very often gypsies and so on, and we would just put the vehicle out of action, you know. So for example, one of the best, we would let the front tyres down, and then when they'd let them down, we'd puncture them, stab them, you know, and then they'd have to go off, because they'd never have a bloody foot pump. They'd have to go off and get a foot pump, come all the way back, pump the tyres up, only to find they're punctured. And that's a sort of deterrent, because you couldn't go up to these guys and say, excuse me, you know, you shouldn't be here, because, I mean, gypsies, they would fight you just as soon as anything, you know. So that was a lot of fun nights, and they would be, you know, out stealing tractor wheels or whatever, diesel or anything they could get their hands on, or shooting the pheasants, you know. So yeah, it was part of the exciting part of the job, going out at night, because you never know what you're going to find, you know. So.
You had mentioned in the book many times about sneaking about or stealth. I'm just curious, those skills, were they passed on to you by somebody, or was that self-developed?
Yeah, mostly, I mean, I learnt a bit myself as time went on, but the old fella in one of them photos, the old gamekeeper, he was in the First World War, so he was going, you know, he'd been dead for years now, and he was quite old then, but he passed on all the tricks of the trade. One of the main things, if you got poachers, or even just people walking their dog and letting their dog run around and into your pheasants and stuff like that, find out where they live. Because once you know where they live, you've got a situation where you can either, you know, if it gets silly, you can take the police there or something, or you can deal with them yourself. So that was one of the first things. And if there's anybody, I mean, I had one occasion where there was a couple of guys snaring rabbits, and I used to follow them. I followed them home, and then I knew where they lived, and there was a bit of a story went on from that. But so yeah, it was you learnt all that stuff, and of course stalking deer or stalking foxes, possibly with a rifle or whatever. You have to be very, very quiet, and crows even, they've got such good eyesight, and it's quite an art to lay somewhere for half an hour without moving, because the first thing they notice if they're about is the movement, and of course then you're not going to shoot the bloody thing, so yeah, a lot of it was from the old guy, and what I learnt myself, you get good at it, sort of thing. So yeah, part of it.
Can you maybe describe these gaming estates? I'm not familiar. Are they private? Are they public? Are there a lot of them in England? I really don't know.
There still are a lot of shooting estates. There's a lot of money involved in shooting. I mean, you can go grouse shooting. You're probably paying £100 for just to shoot one per bird. So it's a lot of money. Pheasants are not as much, and partridges are a bit dearer as well. But when I left school, I worked on just basically a farm, and my first main job, where we were rearing 30,000 pheasants, was Eastwell Park, and that was a private estate at that time. There was Eastwell Manor, ended up a Canadian firm bought it and made a hotel out of it, but the estate was 4,000 odd acres. And a beautiful estate, of course, and we used to rear all them pheasants and so on. And then I went from there to Glastonbury Park, which is on the Sussex border, which had been in a family for years, but they rented the shoot out. And one of the notable things on Glastonbury Park, not Glastonbury, Napoleon's horse, Jaffa, the famous charger of Napoleon, is buried on the estate. So that's quite an interesting thing. And I still talk to Lady Jane and one of her sons now. I sent them my book, I went from there to Sussex, Bedgebury. Bedgebury Forest was a massive forest, mostly owned by the Forestry Commission, but we had a shoot there. I was there in 1987 when the hurricane came through and blew it all away. So I moved then to Shropshire, to a place called Downton Park. And apparently a French lady had bought this estate and wanted to make it into a big shoot. Madame Primaire, her name was, I remember. Used to just ride around in the Range Rover. And I had a situation where I left there, went back down to Sussex, and then I had problems, and that's when I packed it in, eventually over. But I used to still do a lot of shooting after I'd packed in gamekeeping as such, because I used to go out fox shooting at night with a lamp. And we would, farmers who knew me, they would ask me to keep their eyes open, because they'd lose farm gates and tractor wheels and diesel and anything else, because they was pinching. The gypsies mostly would be there pinching that sort of stuff. So yeah, mostly big estates, and it needed to be a fairly big estate to have the amount of birds, So yeah, there we are.
Is there a gentleman's etiquette in the hunting for pheasants that requires of the hunter that the pheasant be flying when you take a shot at it?
Yeah,
and not when it's sitting like.
Oh yeah, no, they wouldn't shoot them on the ground. It was absolute no-no.
Well, the reason I said that because I was involved in a pheasant hunt in Virginia, where I'm from.
Right.
And the owner of the property let out a pheasant, because they're not prevalent to Virginia.
Right.
And nobody would take a shot at it, and that thing would not fly. And we kept gesturing at it and hollering at it and shouting at it, and eventually threw stones at it.
Yeah.
And finally it flew, not for too long.
It obviously knew something that you didn't know.
Okay.
But yeah. But yeah, the going back in the earlier days, it was assumed as a sport. You know, you wouldn't shoot pheasants, even maybe as high as your ceiling. You know, they'd want to be. You'd get the wind right and so on, and you drive the pheasants into the wind, and they'd whip round. And I mean, a guy I used to load for on a double gun day, he was an unbelievable shot. And we were invited to Suffolk to go on the world record partridge shoot, and we thought, oh, that's, you know, and I was going to load for him, but there were so many partridges, they were all bloody fat, and there were hedgerows, you know, about 10 foot high, and they'd barely managed to fly over that, so it was an absolute, you know, anticlimax. We thought we was going to have a great day's sport, and the birds were so bloody fat because there was so much game cover and maize and everything else. They could hardly bloody fly. But yeah, the art, you know, with I don't know if you've ever seen partridge shooting, but they fly pretty fast, although not too high, but they're so fast. And of course, you know, if you have to give them a certain amount of lead, so it's very difficult. And Eastwell Park and Bedgebury Park and so on, some of the pheasants would be 50, 60 yards high, borderline range. For a 6-shot on a shotgun, you know. So yeah, we was always very up to the sport. I know in the USA they all wear day glow orange jackets and stuff like that to go shooting. I don't know, you know, I just can't get my head around that. Yeah, I know. I'm sure it's designed that you don't shoot each other, but. You know, the etiquette of shooting in my days, you know, even when you're standing around, you would unload the guns and break the shotgun and so on like that. And people say, oh, well, it's unloaded. It doesn't matter if it's open and broken, then you know it's unloaded. And of course, we'd have people come shooting sometimes. We had a party of French money brokers from London. They couldn't get a cow's ass with a banjo. I mean, they'd never shot at partridges or pheasants before, and after about the second or third drive, they was all pissed. And almost, you know, you just had to literally stand there holding the gun, making sure it weren't pointing at someone else, you know. So yeah, we'd have days like that as well. But etiquette was a big thing. The old proper sporting gentlemen of years ago, most of which have died out now, but yeah, well, yeah.
You touched on a subject of a forest that was hit by a storm in '87. My father lived in Tunbridge Wells, and he brought me to see that forest. That after the storm,
Bedgebury, yeah,
it flattened the complete forest.
Unbelievable.
It was like matchwood.
Yeah,
a tornado that tore right across the southeast of England.
That's right.
It travelled right up through London.
Yeah.
It flattened trees, 300-year-old trees in Kew Gardens.
Horrendous.
It was an amazing sight to see.
I lived in a cottage on the estate, and I woke up, whatever, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, heard all this noise going on, and what the hell it is, you know. I thought I was dreaming at first because I could hear these, what I thought were branches and so on snapping, but this, in the pine, a lot of pine trees in because it was in September, would just fall down and uproot itself. But a lot of these, they were snapping off 6 foot high, 10 foot high, and trees, you know, 20, 30, 40-year-old trees. And I was 2 weeks with a chainsaw from my cottage, cutting my way out to the road so I could get in here with no electric and all that stuff. It absolutely ruined the estate. I mean, all the pheasant pens were wrecked, you know, and the birds was all over the bloody world and so on, and we were finding dead sheep and cattle and where they'd run into the woods, and it's horrendous, yeah. I think Sevenoaks ended up with 2 oaks, didn't it, or something like that, yeah. But there was a situation where on that estate, Bedgebury, I had a brief relationship. This lady moved onto the estate, into one of the cottages on the estate, and she was a pain in the arse because she was always absolutely fascinating. Oh, you're the gamekeeper, how fascinating. Anyway, time went on and she used to pester me and so on. And one day she said, she asked me if I could get her a pheasant. Right. She said, I have a wonderful recipe for a pheasant. And we were shooting 200 or 300 a day, so that wasn't a big deal. And she said, oh, you'll have to come and have some. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute, this sounds a little bit fruity, you know. Anyway, I had this brief relationship with her, and she got pregnant. Then the hurricane came. She got crazy, because I mean, I was as a single gamekeeper, leading my own life. I wasn't into relationships at that point, and so after that, with the pressure of her and the estate being blown away, I moved to Shropshire. I came down to see the baby briefly, but she was still nuts, so that was the only time. And 20 odd years later, out here, my daughter found me out here. In fact, she's coming back again in October, but that was quite a notable occasion. You know, she came out here. She's a teacher now in Crystal Palace in London. So, and I have another daughter, but she's got 4 children, and they come out when I bloody pay for it. You know. There we are.
David, very interesting talk. I'm ignorant with the pheasant shooting and stuff. What do they do with are they then used as poultry, or, you know?
Yeah, we used to sell most of them to the game dealer. A game dealer would come and collect them, and then they would process them. There was an occasion where there was a disease, respiratory disease, in pheasants, and we had to use all this medicine. Can't remember the name of it now, but anyway, and it made them toxic, so the game dealers couldn't take them because you couldn't eat them. So over one season we buried a lot of pheasants. But to be honest, you know, we used to just cut the breast meat off and sell and freeze them, or sell the breast meat as like you would a chicken, you know.
Hi, Howard. What advice would you give to somebody wanting to start down the route, not the gamekeeper, but writing a book? Okay. And the second one, have you ever shot an African buffalo?
Definitely not, no. I had the misfortune of shooting a donkey, and quite by accident. We were out fox shooting one night, and it was blowing a bloody gale, and there was this fox that every time we put the lamp on it, he would duck down, and you know, you had to be very careful, because once you spook them, you probably never get a shot at them again. And we stalked this bloody fox right along this bank, and it got to a point where there's all this grass blowing, and I could see the eye twinkling through the grass, and I thought, oh, you think I can't see you? So I shot the bloody thing. Went over there, it was about 220 yards, as I remember. And on the lee of the bank, the other side of the bloody, there was a donkey, and I shot the bloody donkey, and I had to go and explain to the farmer the next day and apologise, and he said, oh, it's my daughter's pet, but she'd gone off to university, and he told her that it died of natural causes. So there we are. That was embarrassing. I got piss took out of me for a long time. What was the other question, sorry?
Do you have a question?
Oh, right, writing a book. Well, I'm probably the last one to ask about that, because I'd never done anything like that before the Gamekeeper book. I'd always wanted to sort of get the story out there. And of course, having a bookshop, you might as well write a book, you know. And I read a lot of bits about books and so on. And, for example, Stephen Leather used to bring The Private Dancer years ago and sign them and so on. And he said to me one day, you know, the only difference between me and you is I do it and you haven't done it. Because even back then I had the idea of maybe I'd write the book one day. But there's so much more to it than you realise. You know, it's not just sit there and, you know, it has to be structured and so on. And there was, it's hard work. And in between that, I went from being able to type and then using software to, you know, and now I have to use my mouse and a keyboard on another screen. It's hard work, it really is. But I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm glad I've done it. And the great bit about it is people don't know what's true and what's not true in it, in the book itself. And I'm not going to bloody tell them either. But yeah, it's been quite an experience. I'm glad I've done it because it's something to leave behind, and so on. So, you know, as for being a published author, it doesn't give me a great excitement, to be honest. It's just, you know, anybody should do it, really. Anybody who's got a story to tell should do it, even if it's just something to leave behind, you know. So yeah, it's been interesting.
I have a question. I have probably a couple of questions. One, you called it the Gamekeeper, and the Gamekeeper has this job of trying to keep the vermin at bay and cultivate what's good. Is that why you kept the name for the whole book? Because the stuff that happens in prison has a similar sort of theme.
Yeah,
right?
I think that was possibly something I should have thought a bit more about. Somebody told me after I'd finished this, I should have done a book on the gamekeeping, you know, from when I was a kid right the way up to when I packed it in, and then another book on continuation of a bit of shooting, but then the prisons when I was doing it all for the right reason sort of thing, the Samaritans and so on, and then another book on how it developed into running these bloody debt collectors around and some of the things that happened.
I personally like it as one book.
Okay.
Because it's almost like this, it grows from one into another, where you're trying to take care of the game and keep the poachers and the bad people away.
Yeah.
And that's really a theme that then goes into your interactions in prison and stuff. My theory is the whole book is true, but you've borrowed some other people's stories and incorporated them as well. That's my theory.
Okay. I'm happy with that.
That lets you off the hook for something.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Yeah, look, who has read the book? John, you haven't started reading it? You haven't started? You haven't got a copy? And if you were involved in the prison system, I'd really like to get your opinion on it, because the stuff to do with prisons is electrifying.
That's just, I mean, again, there was a lot of stuff that was a little bit close to the mark, which I didn't put in about, I mean, in fact, ironically, yesterday I read a thing on the Swellside prison on the Isle of Sheppey, where they'd arrested and bailed something like 16 prison warders for all the drugs found in the prison and everything else. And there was Swellside's a Category A prison, and quite notorious, you know, so on, the murderers and a lot of the you know, the drugs in prisons are quite rife, and it keeps them quiet, you see. The prison officers, you know, will turn blind eyes to certain things because they want a quiet life. They don't want somebody coming up behind them with a hot kettle of bloody water over something. So, but yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I'm sure it was 16 prison officers arrested and bailed pending investigation into all the drugs in Swellside prison, which is next door to that prison.
And is the book on the Canterbury Tales of Canterbury Tales, is that out yet?
No, it's being edited as we speak. It's going to have a lot of pictures in there, or a few pictures in it, and it's being edited, should be finished by the end of next week, apparently. Batteries run out, I've talked too much. then it goes to the formatters and then the printers. So I'm hoping by the end of July it'll be a book, a paperback book. So. Yes, Pete. Yeah, good idea. Yeah, we ship books all over Thailand anyway. We've been doing that for years. It's quite cheap to send them and stuff. It's important to put in Canterbury Tales Bookshop in Google if you're looking for us. But we have a Facebook group, which is one I use mostly, Canterbury Tales Bookshop, Pattaya, and people can message me via that, and you know, come along and have a good browse around and so on. But I do have a friend of mine, because I can't do it now, who comes in and does any book searches. So if you're looking for particular books, send me a message via or email me at canterburytalescafe@hotmail.com. And as I say, we can, we'll find the books if we have them and either ship them up country or let you know and you can come in and get them. And as you probably know, we do a trade thing. So every book that's bought with us, you bring it back, you get 50% of the cost price off the next book. And you can trade in your own unwanted books with us. So it's always worked very well. I mean, we've got, 60,000 books in there now, something like that. And we're pretty much the only bookshop in Pattaya now, apart from the one in Soy Pothole that's got a lot of foreign books. But that's more of a massage than a bookshop. You can get a book and so on. But anyway, so we're very flexible like that. We'll ship books all over Thailand. Not expensive. Yeah, we have. We try our best to keep them organised. As you go in the main door and turn left, you've got the A to Z of fiction. So you go up and down and so on. And then we've got science fiction and another section for all the Thailand-related books, the travel books, various self-help, lady authors, romance books, children's section, true crime and war, politics even, all that fiction. Yeah, we have a lot of, we even have some CDs on learning the language. A lot of Thai-related stuff, of course. Always quite popular because we're here, Yeah, we have, I'm sure I sent a photo or two, but anyway, it doesn't matter. We have a cafe area, which is just a set of tables and chairs. We do coffees, teas and cold drinks and stuff. We don't do a lot of food. And we have a lot of banter, a lot of football talk and whatever. Yeah.
No, it's football. But if you're from Australia or America, it's soccer, right?
Football is a sore point at the moment for England, isn't it? They're rubbish. But anyway, we have a laugh. I mean, there's a lot of regulars. Mostly, yeah.
He's asking about the directions, sorry.
Yeah, the directions to find there is, if you can use Google Maps is the easiest way, as long as you put in Canterbury Tales Bookshop, because the old address was Canterbury Tales Cafe, and a lot of times people put in Canterbury Tales and then predictive text comes up cafe and then it sends you to the old shop. But by now, most people know where we are. But we're only 10 minutes walk effectively from the old shop. And that's pretty much if you're on Third Road at the Newex site set up they've got there with a KFC and everything else. Opposite there's a turning and that comes onto Soy Bongkot. And of course there's about 4 bloody Soy Bongkots just to confuse it. But we're on Soy Bongkot 6. But if you go up by the old Cherry restaurant, if anybody remembers that, and then you come on to Soy Bongkot, turn right and just follow that. you'll come to OK Place Apartments on the right, and we're dead opposite there. There's a 7-Eleven next door. So.
And there's actually easy parking near there too for both cars.
Parking there, yeah.
And motorbikes.
That's right.
All right, I have a question about the end of the book, as you don't seem to be writing a sequel to The Gamekeeper. The book ends, I'm not really giving anything away, but somebody sends him a book that says, this book will change your life. And we never find out what the effing book is.
Well, there's 2 or 3 reasons for that. One illegality, but no, the main reason for that was it is a true thing, and it was the ideal or the obvious way to lead on to another book. So I'm definitely not gonna write a sequel. It's still a possibility. So therefore that will lead on from that, and that was part of coming to Thailand and so on. The part that will change.
So was there an actual book that changed your life?
There was not particularly a book. What was in the book?
Right.
Yeah.
What wasn't like a punter's guide to Thailand or something?
No, it wasn't. It was a book given to me with. In fact, I don't read books, as you probably know, and I sort of flicked through it when I got it, and I thought, well, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Going to change my life. It wasn't until I read some stuff at the front of the book that had been a bit altered, but fairly cleverly altered, and that's when it took off, and I came here and so on. I don't want to give too much away.
All right, interesting comment about Stephen Leather. Who here has read Stephen Leather's amazing book, Private Dancer? Who's read it? I keep a copy specifically to immediately give newcomers to Thailand. It is the definitive book to give a newcomer to Thailand to most oriented. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a must-read book. And I also regard The Gamekeeper as a must-read book too.
Another one worth a thought is it was published in, I think, 1956. Jake Reynolds, A Woman of Bangkok.
That's a very old famous book. They made it into a film, I think.
It was voted in the top 10 of books of all time on the subject. And that was a sort of a prequel to Stephen Leather. And Stephen Leather's book was a modern version of it, and it took off a lot better. But
so you got copies of Private Dancer in Canterbury Tales?
Rarely, they never come back. People
you keep it because you think I'm going to pass this on to the next visitor to Thailand. It's amazing.
We do have A Woman of Bangkok. We have some of them, but Private Dancer, if it comes in today, it'll be gone by tomorrow. And unfortunately, Stephen, he's too busy now, so he doesn't come down. Because he used to bring them down and sign them and all that,
Well, we'd love to have him give a talk at the club, that's for sure. So, but how good was this talk? A round of applause for David Collier for sharing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely sensational. We do have a small token of our appreciation to put up on those wonderful walls of yours.
Okay, yeah.
And, of course, it's... we're going to do this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't hold it. That's what I tell the wife. Thank you, Cup.
Yeah, he's going to come back and do a morning about this jokes about people with disabilities next time. Is that right?
Oh.
No. Come back when the book's out.
Frustration.
Come back when the book's out. We've got copies of it for sale for 300 baht. Right? Amazing price.
My favourite phrase is, "Does your nose itch more when you can't scratch it?"
Oh yeah, that's notorious.
How many times a day do you scratch your nose or your ear or your and I can't now, and I get fed up with asking the wife, but it is so frustrating. Yeah.
I can only vaguely imagine, but we didn't have to. I seriously encourage you. First, you must read Private Dancer. Unbelievable book, the book to read for newbies to read coming into Thailand, and you must read this book. It's extraordinary. Especially, I think people who are from England and Australia get it more easily than Americans because they don't have the language so much. But yeah, really, and I'm actually going to give some copies to my friends who've worked in the penal system in England. I think it'll be amazing. But another round of applause for what really, really wonderful morning.
Thank you very much. And needless to say, I'm in the bookshop. I try and be as accurate as I can, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from about 10 a.m. till sometimes 2, but sometimes 5 p.m. depending how my lungs get by, because it's a bit stuffy and a bit hot there. So I'm down there anytime anyone, come and have a chat and a laugh and a cup of tea and get some books, and trade in your own books and so on.
So just a question in terms of your mobility, are you able to sign copies to the book?
Can, yeah. I mean, Dan has to, my lad here, wherever he's gone, he has to hold my wrist, and I can just about, it's not great, but it's as close to as it used to be, yeah.
Sorry? What are the normal hours of your bookshop?
Thank you, Pete. We open 9 a.m. Dan over there, he's been with us for years and years and years. He'll be there from about just before 9 till 5 p.m. every day. We only ever close on the 19th of April for Songkran. That's it. We never close. So that's it. Yeah, open every day.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, mate. It's just been great to see you again, and it was great to read the book too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.